All right, welcome back to College Football Addiction. I've got AJ Black with me, Eagle Insider and Locked on BC, to chat a little bit about Thomas Castellanos, this situation going on with Boston College at this point. AJ, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, TJ.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your flexibility and chatting with us a little bit. So we were just talking about this off air, and whenever somebody jumps in the portal, the first narrative around it, especially if a kid's gotten benched or isn't playing at that point, well, he's just a quitter. He's just no longer around the team, and there's always like five sides to every story, which so not always the case of something like that. But let's back up before we get to that, and for those maybe not as familiar, or maybe those that haven't watched, what led to BC kind of going a different route with quarterback this year anyway?
So the season started with Bill O'Brien talking about how he was going to make Thomas Castellanos a pocket quarterback. Like last year, we saw Castellanos running a lot. He ran for 1,100 yards. He had 15 rushing touchdowns, but he was throwing, and he was one of the lowest rated passers in the ACC. He threw a ton of interceptions. He had 14 interceptions, but I think was second most next to Haynes King in the conference. So he struggled. And Bill O'Brien, he's a quarterback guy. He wanted to make Tommy more of a pocket quarterback and be able to throw the ball more. He said he always wanted to let him use his legs, but Bill wanted to help him, fine tune a lot of the things that make him a quarterback. So the season starts. He plays FSU. He looks like Tommy from last year. He ran for 71 yards and a touchdown. He threw pretty well. The beginning of the season's okay. But as the season starts to get into the grind, when you hit the ACC meat of the schedule, Louisville, Virginia Tech, Virginia, you're starting to see a lot of mistakes out of him. His running game starts to completely evaporate. His confidence starts to dwindle. And he's making a ton of mistakes, like lots of fumbles, missed passes. He's missing reads. There's guys wide open. He's just not finding them. And, it's starting to hurt the team. The Louisville second half was really the key, I think, that really started to ignite this, because BC was up 20 nothing over the Cardinals in the beginning of that game. Louisville storms back. Castellanos has to get the ball in his hands, and he goes for 5 of 15, I think, in the second half, and just looks completely lost. Start the Syracuse game. BC's running the ball well, but Castellanos, who he has this tendency to try to do things himself. He throws a bad interception. He goes 2 for 7 for 7 yards and negative 10 yards rushing. And O'Brien gives him the first drive of the second half. He goes 3 and out in 5 seconds. And on the last play, he gets sacked because, again, he's scrambling around, not doing anything. And he gets hurt. So Bill O'Brien then switches to Grayson James. Grayson James leads them on 3 straight touchdown drives, and BC beats Syracuse. Get to Monday. Sunday, he meets with Castellanos. He said this during the press conference. He met with Castellanos and James and explained where his direction was going to go, and it was going to be with Grayson James. Castellanos took it poorly. He left, and O'Brien gave him a couple days to clear his head, and he never returned.
Yeah. Do you? How much of it is so? This will be pretty kind of FSU focused. We're putting this on the national channel, but obviously I cover FSU pretty closely, and so FSU fans, it's been rumored that that could be a potential landing spot, not a done deal or anything like that, and the portal hasn't even opened. But FSU fans, those that maybe don't watch a lot of BC football, will remember Castellanos killing them 2 years in a row.
Yeah,
and so half of FSU's fans are like, man, go get him. This guy can do no wrong. The FSU game this year maybe fooled people on both sides of thinking how good Thomas would be this year. The Florida State win, certainly in retrospect, it's still a big program win, not really an impressive win for the resume for BC. I would venture to say even BC fans would probably agree with that. Right. Their feelings about it this year are probably a little bit different than they were on Labor Day. But in his other games, like you've mentioned, has really struggled, right? And even last year in the FSU game, not a great first half. Second half, they obviously had the comeback, aided with a fumble 6 and some other things that happened in that game. But I do think that for some reason he's gotten up for Florida State really well. And then outside of that, it's been pretty spotty. Now he's certainly got all the physical tools, but outside of that, just specifically, do you think that at this point, that's just kind of who he is as a quarterback, or did the regime shift kind of hurt him? Like, did that maybe stunt what could have been a better year had the old guard stayed in place?
I mean, if they could have used last year's scheme with some just tweak, I feel like with him it was a tweak. Like you needed to like teach him a few things about being a quarterback. But what they drilled into him basically is to stand in the pocket and keep making reads, and then he would stand there way too long, and then the pressure would get to him, and I don't know if he was hurt this year. He just didn't seem as fast, and that ended up getting him killed. So I want to say the scheme is a big issue, and I think the school he ends up at, if he can find a school that will let him do what made him good last year and maybe deal with the mistakes and help him grow from it, I think he'll be successful. If he finds a school that's going to make him, he's 5'8", 5'9", and I've had my scout guy who watches film. He says Tommy has to really struggle to look over that offensive line, and guys have to be wide open for him to see it because he misses things. So there's that piece too, like where there's some physical pieces that make it hard. I mean, BC's had small quarterbacks in the past that have been Heisman winners, but I think what you see is what you get with him. I don't think the prolific passer or the above average passer that they were hoping to get out of him is ever going to come out. I just don't think it's possible. I mean, you look at his interceptions versus touchdowns. He was 18-5, right? That's a huge improvement. But watching game to game, there'd be times, like you look at the beginning of the Syracuse game. He throws a great touchdown pass and then does nothing. You look at the Louisville game. He starts strong off in the first half of that game and then does nothing. So it was a lot of inconsistency with him. He had the lowest QBR in the ACC this year, and I think a tough system might, a pass heavy system is kind of setting him up to fail. One that will let him do his things with his legs and hopefully keep him healthy too would make him successful.
Yeah, from the Florida State perspective, again, Florida State took a chance on a quarterback in DJ Uiagalelei this year. And, I think it worries fans of that fan base that they would maybe go back to a very boomer bust, like a guy that they're going to need. Florida State's got a lot of issues, and a guy that they're going to need to be a really good quarterback that can do a lot on his own, right? And I don't think they wanted DJ to do that. I think they thought they had a better offensive line, a better running game, a better defense that would just let DJ kind of manage the game. Obviously, they didn't have any of that, right? Like, not a good running game. They've got a really bad defense, and so they needed DJ to do more. And now they could certainly improve offensive line in the portal, and I think they like their running backs, and I think they'll like their defense next year more. But if they're not able to improve those things drastically, and they were to bring in a guy like Castellanos, that they'd probably be asking him to do too much in that situation, in my opinion, right? I can't project what Florida State's going to look like in 2025. It is kind of, I want to ask you this and see if you have a take here, but it has been whispered, it has been rumored that the narrative around him quitting on the team, may or may not be true. There may have been other things going on there, or they're just, there's two sides to every story. Are you familiar with any of that, or do you think it's kind of more as cut and dry as it looks? Like, hey, we're going to move on to this other guy, and he took a couple of days and then just took the rest of the season and said, like, I think I'm out of here. Do you have a take there?
I mean, even Castellanos's goodbye message was basically saying, "Bye, guys, I quit." That was literally what he said in it. It was like, "Guys, I wanted it to end, but it's over now. Goodbye." It seemed to me like everything I've heard, and I've not heard specifically anything from his perspective. Like, he's been quiet, but Bill has been talking about it, and I've heard rumblings too that the end of the game. I was up in the press box. I saw it. The game ends, and everyone goes to cheer, and they're ready to go do alma mater and all that. Castellanos beelines out, but without everyone, just leaves. So that was clear. You saw that happen. And then what I've heard, they had that meeting, is that he basically just quit the team. Like that was it. Like he just said, Bill was in at least 2 or 3 radio shows this week where he used the words "he left us," and so I don't want to trash the kid. As I said on my podcast, he was an exciting player. It was a disappointing end, and I have a hard time believing this is anything other than him quitting.
Yeah, the timing of it, again, more of the speculation, the rumor of like, oh, there's 2 sides to every story or 5 sides to every story when it really comes down to it. Like that needs to come to light for me from an outside perspective. And again, it's hard to, I'm not trying to, like you just said, I'm not trying to trash the kid either, but from an outside perspective, it's hard for me to look at what's laid in front of me and think that anything but what we're assuming is the case. Now, some kind of bombshell gets blown up later, something comes out, maybe we could readjust and say like, well, okay, I kind of see your perspective here. I do wonder too, like, you mentioned, a quarterback comes in and leads 3 straight touchdown drives. They end up winning a game. Like, would there have been a path to him getting back in had maybe the backup struggled later? Like, could he have found his way back on the field, or was this kind of a for the future move?
I don't know. Bill was not clear if this was a just SMU game or if this was, I want to say he used the term, this is what we're going to do moving forward. But I'm going to tell you right now, I expect Grayson James to struggle, especially against SMU. I think he's going to have a hard time. So I could see a path for Castellanos to come back if he had just, swallowed his pride and come back. No. But he didn't. And the part that I think is I see a lot of BC folks angry about is that there's 3 more games left. Not even including the bowl. Like you had Grayson James. Grayson James at practice was a cheerleader for him, and like always pepping up all the other players on his team, pepping up Thomas when Tommy would make a big play. And he gets his chance, and Tommy leaves off skulking when he doesn't get his moment. I mean, to me, that's so hard to to have any empathy for, because like all you had to do is just suck it up for 3 games. Just suck. You're going to get your NIL, the rest of your NIL money. Maybe you'll finish your degree for in the next month or so, and then you can hit the portal. But what difference does it make if you do it now versus in December? Like, you can't even officially enter the portal now anyways because they have that window,
Yeah, and then if there is more to the story, you've shown other teams like, I'm not just going to quit, right? Like DJ got benched at Clemson and he didn't. You know what I'm saying? Like there are multiple examples of people doing it both ways, the right the right way and the wrong way. Now again, if some kind of bombshell comes out, then you need to let us know about that, because everyone has a perception is reality. At the end of the day, and other coaches see that, other teams see that. How does that play out? Especially if you do go to another ACC team that wears the same colors as you. Right. In fact, other players see that, like they're not dumb, like they understand how that stuff works. And so if there are other things at play, I'm not saying you have to air out all the dirty laundry, but I do think you need to. Save your own reputation, because the reputation right now is that you quit, and a message board fodder of, hey, there's 2 sides to every story, doesn't necessarily remove the idea that you still kind of quit on the team. Even if there was something else, you still took your ball and went home. So
it's so sad too, because he was the most popular player on this team by far. Sure. And the reaction from BC fans, there's no BC fans that are taking his side on this. It's all against him. The only people you hear from are people from Waycross, Georgia, his hometown, that jump in and like, Tommy's right here, they quit on him, blah, blah, blah. But no, like it's not a good look for him. And you're right. Like, if there's something else that happened, he owes it to himself and his future to say something, because, his ability to make a Power 4, roster is going to depend on that. If people just see him as a quitter, some school may say there's quarterback A and quarterback B. Quarterback B's Castellanos, he quit. That's going to be bad for our culture. I'm going to go with quarterback A. Yeah. That might make him end up at, Coastal Carolina or Liberty or something like that. Who knows? And that might cost, that's going to cost him money.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's a weird situation, but again, until we know more, or if we ever know more, it's hard to think much else than what's kind of black and white right in front of our eyes. So
Right.
I appreciate your time, man. Where can people follow you? Where can they find more of your work?
Yeah, you can check me out at Eagle Insider. I'm part of the 247 network. I have a whole list of writers there. It's covering all BC sports and on Locked On BC. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247.
Awesome, man. I appreciate your time, buddy.
All right, thanks, TJ.